Hey everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Um, Happy New Year to you. I'm in the process of moving. Just for everyone's information, we're heading out early tomorrow morning. At least that's the plan. We've been planning to leave so many times. As you can see, we're not taking everything. We can't, but we are taking the essentials that we need for life up in New York State. We're very excited, but also very overwhelmed with the task of moving 6 animals and all the essentials up to New York State. Um, anyway, I we don't feel ready. I don't feel ready, but we're doing what we can do. Um, it's just this house is just too much for me to deal with right now. It's just too much. I'm married to a hoarder who has lived in this house for over 30 years, and I've lived in this house for over 10 years, the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life. And it's just an overwhelming task for me to go through this house. And we're not selling the house, okay? I mean, that our intention is not to sell. Um, I'm hoping that we'll be able to afford to keep it because it is our love nest and where we can stay when we're in Georgia because we do still have business in Georgia. All right. Well, this impromptu live stream is regarding the 14th Amendment. Here we are on New Year's Day 2025. I have to get used to that. And we have a constitutional uh, emergency here because the Supreme Court ruled in, I guess it was in May of this year, regarding Colorado not putting Trump on the ballot because a court of law in Colorado ruled that Trump was a insurrectionist. In a court of law, they went through, Trump had his legal team there. He was represented fully, and they went through the whole case. And Donald John J. Trump, whatever, Donald J. Trump, Donald John Trump, aka, he was found guilty of being an insurrection. He's an adjudicated insurrectionist, right? And I'm sure they appealed, and the Supreme Court of Colorado confirmed this ruling. In the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, all that it states in Section 3, it says nothing about a court of law finding someone guilty of being an insurrectionist. I mean, that's over and beyond what is required according to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, if you read it, and we will look at it together in a moment. But, and not only did that happen in Colorado, but Donald J. Trump, aka Donald John Trump, was impeached because of his participation on January 6th of, was it 2020? I believe it was. Yes, it was. Um, so we have the impeachment. Yes, he was not convicted because that is a very high standard, and that's a problem that we can't remove when more than half the United States wants to remove a president, they can't. That's a problem with the Constitution. Okay, that's a problem that needs to be corrected somehow, some way. But anyway, he was impeached, successfully impeached, okay, by votes in both houses, both, Senate and the House. So that's, impeached, successfully impeached, and found guilty of insurrection and in a court of law in Colorado, and which was confirmed by the Supreme Court of Colorado. Okay. So, and in the Constitution, it says nothing about how someone is determined to be an insurrectionist. All that it states, and let's go to the page. Hold on just a moment. All right. So you can see this now, right? All that it states, this is all about the 14th Amendment here. Okay. Now, I just want to emphasize that section 1, this is the amendment, this is 14. Amendment 14. Section 1 is what states what the amendment is. Section 2, 3, 4, and 5 only elaborate on what is in section 1. This is very important to understand. The bulk, the core of the amendment is here in section 1. And in section 2, it talks about, okay, let's read section 1 first before I explain. Section 1, okay, Amendment 14, Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. I would argue that I've been deprived of my property without any due process of American law or any kind of process that I have personally participated in. And I have been denied the equal protection of the laws. I would argue that. But, that's aside from the point here because we're talking about the 14th Amendment when it comes to when we're talking about Donald J. Trump, aka Donald John Trump. Okay. So this amendment is about, people particularly of African American heritage who, formerly were slaves in our nation, um, making it clear that all persons born, regardless of their religion, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender for that matter. I know in here it's unclear. I haven't studied my constitution lately. I just have been looking at this particular amendment. I do I mean, I really hope that I know Kennedy, who signed into law that women, should be paid the same as men. And, I'm sure it's in the Constitution that women have the right to vote. I just haven't studied where that is or, read the area of the Constitution because we're not dealing with that today. We're dealing with Donald J. Trump, aka Donald John Trump, who is a menace to society. And I just want to make why. I want to make clear why. Okay. Well, I'm not going to be going into the why. I just want to make clear how he is not eligible to be president, to be put back in office. He never was eligible in my view, my personal view, but he certainly, according to the Constitution, is not eligible today. And he shouldn't have ever been put on a ballot. He shouldn't have ever been nominated for as the nominee for any political party. It's just crazy what is going on in our society today. Okay, so that's section 1 that I just read. Okay, it's just basically establishing that everyone born in the United States is a full citizen. Okay, it doesn't matter what details, what color their skin is, what religion they practice, what gender they are. I mean, I know this doesn't go into gender here, but basically it just says that everybody that's born here is a citizen. Okay. And that's what this amendment is about. Section 2 goes on to explain how representatives should be, chosen to represent these people who are citizens of the United States. Okay. So it's elaborating on section 1. Section 3 goes on to state, that high offices, this is the controversial section here that states, like, in terms of high offices, if someone is an insurrectionist, they are not appropriate to become, they're not authorized, they're not allowed, they're not eligible to become president of the United States. And then section 4 goes into debts, how, any debts that are related to an insurrection or, um, in term or related to the emancipation of slaves or anything like that are illegal and void, and the United States doesn't owe anything. Elaborating all on Section 1. Really, the full amendment is right here in Section 1. This is the amendment right here. And these are all the details elaborating on that Section 1. Section right, so debts are Section 4. Section 5 just kind of says, "Oh, and yeah, by the way, Congress has the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article." And I looked up the word provisions, the definition of a provision, and we kind of know this, right? I mean, I kind of figure I kind of know this kind of stuff, but the definition of a provision is a rule or condition that is written in a legal document like a contract or law. It tells you what you have to do or what you can't do. Sometimes a provision starts with the words provided that and adds extra information or exceptions to the rule. Okay, I wanted to look that up because let me see if am I back? Let's see. I have to share again to go back to the page. Oh, it says it's still sharing. Okay. So let me just go back. I have to figure out where I was. This is what we're sharing, right? Yeah, I think I'm sharing this. All right. So all of these are provisions. All of these things in every section is a provision. So technically, it can be related to anything in any of these sections that Congress has the power to enforce by appropriate legislation. Okay, it's any provision in any of these sections. But the thing is, the way it's worded in the 14th Amendment, Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article right here. It doesn't say Congress is required to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. No, it says nothing about any requirements. It just says that Congress has the authority to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article if Congress deems it necessary. It's Congress that decides that, not the Supreme Court or anyone else. Okay? It's Congress that has the power, not the Supreme Court. This amendment, this 14th Amendment mentions nothing about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not involved in this at all. This is Congress's job. This is Congress's area. Okay? So the Supreme Court is irrelevant. Okay? And okay, so let's read section 2. Since we already read section 1, let's read section 2 so we can lead up to section 3. And by the way, these are not they are connected by section 1, right? Every one of these sections refers to section 1. This is very important to understand. Section 2 is referring to section 1, as is section 3, as is section 4, and then section 5 as well. Okay, it's not like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. After step 3, you have to go to step 4, and after step 4, you got to go to step 5, section 5. It's not like that. And in the way that in their ruling about how I'm talking about the Supreme Court, the devious what do I call them? The abomination that is our Supreme Court right now. I mean, it's disgusting. The deterioration of this court, thanks to Trump. He has infected it. He has destroyed the foundation of our democracy by injecting, I remember Obama had the right to choose a Supreme Court justice, and the Republican dominated, was it the Senate or the House? I don't know. They didn't allow him his right to choose a Supreme Court justice who, because somebody died or something during his term. They didn't allow him to because it was an election year. I think that is absolutely disgusting that that can happen in our government. And Trump got all these because everybody in, the Republican side, they want to dominate and take control. I mean, it's basically a coup at this point is how I see it. And I mean, it's disgusting. I can't even believe this. Our founding fathers are rolling in their graves. And I'm related to some of them. Thomas Jefferson, I am a direct descendant of Thomas Jefferson and his slave Sally Hemings. Did I say that right? Did I say her last name right? Um, it's just absolutely disgusting. Okay, let's read section 2, like I said. Okay, so here we go. So we stated that all people born and naturalized in the United States are citizens, basically, is what section 1 says. Section 2, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. This is about numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. And, that was at the time period. Now Indians are citizens too. And I'm sure there's another amendment. We hope there's another amendment making sure that, everyone of every race, of every gender, of every sexual orientation, whatever, is considered a citizen if they are born in the United States of America. But so here we are, we're continuing. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state. I know this is an old world view of the world. It's not, really, they need to correct this because this is still a law on the books and it states male, and that is incorrect, you know. And this is why the CIA that's how they get off, thinking, doing what they do, it's just men that have all the rights, they're operating on antiquated laws like this. And this is our Constitution. It should be up to date and thorough and the latest. Okay, so is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime. Rebellion is a crime, insurrection is a crime. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. So basically it's saying that the number of representatives chosen, the number of representatives chosen for a certain state shall be reduced by the number of those people they represent. The criminals, that are not eligible to vote shall be removed from the numbers, and the number of representatives shall be adjusted likewise. Like the people who are criminals, that will be removed from the total number of people in a state, and then the number of representatives shall be adjusted likewise. I guess that's the best way of explaining it. This is antiquated verbiage, but that's basically what it's saying. It's just saying that, there need to be representatives for these people who are eligible to vote in a state, and, the numbers need to reflect the number of people that are eligible to vote in a state, basically. All right, and here we get to section 3, which is what everyone is talking about. It's all the rage right now. Section 3, no person shall be a or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath, which Donald J. Trump, aka Donald John Trump, did when he became president the first time around. What a joke. Um, as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislator, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state. It was to become when he became president. To support, so he made an oath to support the Constitution of the United States. Okay, so anyone who makes that oath and shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, the same, which they're saying the same, which is the United States, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, thereof, period. Stop. End. So it's not very clear language. This is the problem with our Constitution. It's not very clear. We need clarity. So basically, anyone who makes takes the oath and promises to protect the Constitution of the United States of America, but also has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, cannot be. It says no person shall, they cannot be a senator, representative in Congress, elector. Trump is right now president-elect, elector of, he cannot be president-elect and vice president, or hold any office, civil, military, under the United States, under any state, as a member of Congress, as an officer of the United States, as a member of any state legislator, as an executive or judicial officer of any state. They're not eligible. This is Section 3, and it just simply states that. It's just automatic. And these people who claim, oh, you have to, this is what the Supreme Court, in their little commentary, dicta, as some people refer to it, they included a little comment on, they didn't disagree with Colorado ruling that Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. They an abdicated insurrectionist. But what they said, that the Constitution, basically what they said, the Supreme Court, that is, said, it doesn't, that doesn't mean you can take him off the ballot, because there's nowhere in here that says they cannot be on the ballot. It doesn't state that, does it? We just read this. It does not state that they must be removed from the ballot or anything. So Colorado had to include Trump on their ballot. Okay. But that doesn't, but he won, right? At least they claim he won. I don't believe he really won. It was a margin of 1 point. What was it? I don't know. It was a very small margin. It wasn't even 2% he won over Kamala Harris. And I really think it was like a combination of 4 or 5 states, all swing states, that put him in the winning column, and not by very much. And that's pretty suspicious. And I really do believe that something is about to be revealed. I really do think that all his complaining about the Democrats rigging the election, I believe he rigged the election, because I know my vote always has authority over every other vote. And I know that sounds really crazy to people. I know it does. It sounds really crazy, but it's true, because I know how I have voted in elections, and I know who won, and I know what I was told when I was a child, and I've seen, the effects of my vote. And this is the only election that I voted on election day. I have to vote on election day. I have to vote for someone on the ballot, and they have to be either Republican or Democrat. It's a two-party system. Yeah, we can vote for a third party, but it's a two-party system according to old world laws, because this is what we're forced to abide by, because nothing's been updated for many, many years. So, okay, I voted for the Democrat, which was Kamala Harris, on election day. We're at my polling place on election day, and she is a Democrat. Yeah, the Democrat, which is Kamala. She was on the ballot. I did everything the way I was supposed to, and if I do that, the person I vote for, I'm kind of like a super delegate vote, a super duper queen vote. And that person always wins as long as it's a national election. It can't be a primary. It can't be a local voting thing. It has to be a national federal election, which is what the presidency, the general election is. And that person always wins. It doesn't work if I do, the primary, vote in the primary or some local election, and unless I'm Dean. Okay, I'm on the air. Okay, I'm live. I didn't want you to let Wispy out. Where is Wispy? Can you close the door before he gets out? Can you close it? Please don't let him out. We have trouble with our cat Wispy. Dean, close it. He always is getting out the door. He just somehow, I won't get into it. We don't want to leave him in Georgia, so we have to be really careful he doesn't get out. Okay, and we're about to leave tomorrow morning. I mean, we're not ready, but we just gotta get it together and get out of here. We're so ready to get out of here. Okay, so getting back to the 14th Amendment. What was I talking about? I don't really remember now. But we read over section 2, and it refers to section 1, as does section 3, as does section 4, as does section 5. And so the Supreme Court commenting on section 5, saying, okay, Colorado, you don't have the right to stop, you don't have the right to remove him from your ballots. And then they decided to go a step further. I mean, they weren't ruling on anything else but that measure, that like, okay, can we take him off our ballots? No, that the answer was no, because nowhere in the Constitution does it say that you have to remove him from the ballot, even though he's an abdicated, is that what you say? Insurrectionist. Okay, all right, Supreme Court. The Supreme Court knew that he was going to win, because they're in the know. They know he'd rigged the election probably. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to be blunt. I'm not talking about the liberal ones, okay? They don't have any power, unfortunately. It's those corrupt ones who are in total domination, and they think they've got this in the bag, and they're all operating like a machine to take over the United States and do away with its democracy and get all my money, I guess. I can't even imagine what they're all planning together. They're all in on this, and it's disgusting. I want to puke. I want to throw up. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to pretend I'm a lawyer. But if you have any kind of sense of logic, of, any logical brain, you can see that these sections, section 5 is referring to section 1, which is the basic idea of the whole amendment, the whole reason the amendment came into being, which is to make it clear that everyone born in the United States is a citizen with full rights. Okay? It doesn't matter what color their skin is. Doesn't matter, I'm going to take it as far as to say it doesn't matter what gender they have, what gender they are. It doesn't matter what their sexual orientation is. It doesn't matter what their religion is. They are full-fledged citizens with all the rights that come with being a citizen of the United States. And I would argue I have not received any of my rights. My rights have been stripped of me a long time ago, and I'm being held hostage in jail. I don't know what, CIA jail, and have been stripped of my life, and I've never been allowed to be an adult. I'm kept in minor, as a minor who has no rights, and I'm 59 years old, and I'm still waiting to turn 18. That's how I see it. That's how it feels. And I'm furious, and there's nothing, it seems like there's nothing I can do about it. But it's January 1st. Maybe things have shifted, and tomorrow is the first business day of the new year, and maybe things are different now. And as soon as I get up to New York, I really hope everything is different. I'm really hoping that I have a life for the first time ever in New York State, the land of my maternal lineage. My grandma Flanagan, she was really born in Vega, but the story is she was born in Wellsville, New York, to a German immigrant family, and she grew up there. She definitely did grow up there from the time she was a young girl. I mean, she supposed, the cover story is that she was born and was raised there, and she died there. And she married another guy, Bernard Flanagan. Her maiden name was Illig. And Bernard, was also born and raised in Wellsville, New York, and I believe he really was born there and raised there. He was born to to not a German, an Irish immigrant family, a very large one who were contractors in town. They were pretty well off actually, and I know my grandma thought that she was marrying well, and you know I believe he was like a little bit of a hothead, and she managed him. I kind of feel like my marriage to Dean is very similar to, or a certain, there's a similar dynamic. There's a similar dynamic with my marriage to Dean as my grandma's marriage to my grandpa. I never met my grandpa Flanagan. He died before I was born. Died on April 9th, 1952. And my mother was 13 at the time, and it was right after that that Jose Tota came to town and entrusted a large sum of money to my grandmother, who was going to protect it. And they had a secret, they had a top secret love affair, and my grandmother gave, I call him Daddy, a lock of her curly brown hair, and they went into the lab and through genetic engineering created me, their love child. And I have many, many, many fathers, not just one, but Daddy is, and by the way, Daddy is now known as Clint Eastwood. I know, it's just wild and crazy. I know. But that doesn't, the story is wild and crazy, but that doesn't mean I'm crazy, okay? It's just the story that's so hard for everyone to believe. Okay, and that's why I'm top secret, and that's how they keep me top secret, because I look like a fool, like a crazy fool talking about this, because nobody in their right mind can believe such fantasies, right? Because in our world, everything's very black and white and straight and narrow, and things like that are not possible. I know. And I'm very well aware of how crazy and silly and far-fetched it is, but it's the real truth, and it's the real story, and nobody else speaks it, but I'm allowed to freely speak it, even though it's top secret. Okay, I'm the only one allowed to do that. I'm not bound by any law to not speak freely. Okay, I'm free to speak freely. I always have been, and I won't get into any more details than that. Let's get back to the 14th Amendment. All right. So we just went over, didn't we? We read, um, right. We read section 3, and it's pretty clear, right? It doesn't say, you would think that if what the Supreme Court mentioned, was it back in May? They said, okay, what they said was, no, Colorado, you can't remove Trump from the ballot. And then they said, as an aside, as little like them just venting or little commentary on the side, dicta as they call it. They said, "Oh, and if uh, you know, for him to, I don't know, be found ineligible." I don't know what I should probably bring up I'll bring it up in a minute. Let me just sum it up from what I understand it to be, to say, if you were to say he was ineligible to be president, you would have, Congress would have to uh and you know uh enforce this by appropriate legislation in section 5. They mentioned section 5 right here at the bottom here. And but section 3, which is the section that makes clear that any insurrectionist is not eligible to become president. is very clear that nothing else is required. It's just, if somebody is found to be an insurrectionist, they are not eligible to be president. Period. End stop, right? That's all it says. It's very I mean, that part is very clear. They don't say, "Oh, please refer to section 5 for your next step." It doesn't say that, does it? Here, let me go back. It does not say. All it says, let me go so I can see it more clearly. All it says is it gives Congress an out, but it says, but Congress may by a vote of 2/3 of each house remove such disability. That's what it states. It gives Congress an out. Like, oh, if somebody engaged in insurrection and you think that he should still, or he or she should still be president, you can, if 2/3 of both houses vote to remove such a disability, then that person can become president. That's what that's saying. It gave Congress an out. Like, maybe somebody engaged in insurrection, but there was some reason, some you know, like some story behind it that was just atypical and just like I don't, we can't even imagine what would be a valid reason for instigating an insurrection, right? I don't think the founders could think of, or the people who wrote this could think of a reason why somebody would engage in insurrection. Now, this was written in the 1800s, thinking of, slavery and the Civil War. I don't know, but they wanted to give them an out in case there was a situation that arose in the future where they wanted the people who wrote this amendment wanted to give Congress an out in case there was some situation that they all agreed by 2/3 of each house that such a person should still be president. Okay, I think that was very gracious of the people who wrote this, and that is the only way that you can remove this disability, as they call it. Okay? That's the only way. Um, it doesn't say, "Oh, and for further instructions, please refer to section 5." It doesn't say that. It does not say that. And that's what the Supreme Court is trying to imply, or trying to say, like, "Oh, you can't just, like, Colorado, you can't just decide he's an insurrectionist and then, like, Congress doesn't have a way." I mean, because we all know that 2/3 of Congress, in each house they're not gonna get that disability removed. He will be disqualified, Trump will be disqualified, and Kamala Harris will be president. And because the Republicans know that, because the Supreme Court, full of political allies with Trump, paid off. We all know they're being paid a lot of money to do their dirty duties. They're implying that they're not implying, they're saying, "Oh, but section you can't forget about section 5. You need to go to section 5 and put together a law." And I went ahead and I'm going to share a different page now. Okay, and um here it is. Wait, where is it? Okay. I went ahead and looked this up. There are there are enforcement clauses, okay? And number 3, pre-modern doctrine on enforcement clause says, and it says here, I just wanted to point this out. Here it is. Justice William Brennan protested that this view attributes they were talking about something else. Attributes a far too limited objective to wait. Where is this? Ugh. Okay, where is it? Oh, I can't find it. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, Okay, it's on my phone that I was looking at, and where did I put my phone? I don't know where I put it. Here it is. I'm gonna have to just read it to you, okay? Because I can't find it in this document. Um, okay, so in my phone, this is what I was testing earlier on Facebook. Um, I couldn't switch to another page and still be on camera, so I couldn't do this on Facebook, okay? So, but what I was, the area that I found, it's it's that third enforcement clause that's on the screen right here. It says there's an area where it says in the paragraph, Justice William Brennan rejected this reasoning. We emphasize that Congress's power under Section 5 is limited to adopting measures to enforce the guarantees of the amendment, Amendment 14. Okay. Section 5 grants Congress no power to restrict, abrogate, or dilute these guarantees. Okay. So what he's saying is, the guarantees of the 14th Amendment are that everybody born in this country has the right to all the, is a citizen, and it has full citizen rights, basically, regardless of the color of their skin, their religion, whatever. Okay. And he's saying that, you know, basically that section, um, everything's points to section 1, which is what the amendment is, okay? He's pointing to section 1. All the other sections point to section 1. Section 1 states, for the record, what the amendment is. And so it's not talking about like section 3, oh, we got to like pass laws regarding every detail, all the provisions and all the sections. It all boils down to section 1. That's what laws are made and based on when Congress has to pass a law regarding this amendment. Okay, and then here's this other thing. I wrote these clause passages. There's another clause passage that I wrote here that I printed here. Um, yeah, I illustrates that the court is not will not always defer to Congress's determination as to what legislation is appropriate to enforce the provisions of the 14th Amendment. In another case, the Supreme Court held that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which expressly overturned the Supreme Court's narrowing of religious protections under Employment Division versus Smith, exceeded congressional power under section under I don't know, I don't see section number there. Under that section of the 14th Amendment, although the court allowed that Congress's power to legislate to deter or remedy constitutional violations may include prohibitions on conduct that is not itself unconstitutional, the Supreme Court also held that there must be a congruence and proportionality between the means adopted and the injury to be remedied. Unlike the pervasive suppression of the African American vote in the South that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act, there was no similar history of religious persecution constituting an egregious, egre- egre- egregious, egregious predicate for the far reaching provision of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Also, unlike the Voting Rights Act, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act contained no geographic restrictions or termination dates. So, okay, so basically in this they're stating that the Congress only needs to legislate acts, that's the legislation they're talking about in section 5, acts. It's called act. Like for instance, they mention the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the Voting Rights Act. Okay, these are acts, right? They're called acts. And what kind of act would Congress have to put together to uh to label Trump, I mean, in relation to section what is it, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, to make it law that Donald J. Trump, aka Donald J. John Trump, is an insurrectionist. I mean, what kind of act would do that? I mean, there's no act necessary. Section 3 is very, very clear. If somebody is determined, if it is determined, like it doesn't say in a court of law or anything, but we have a court of law and a Supreme Court of a state, Colorado State Court, and the Supreme Court of Colorado confirming that Donald J. Trump, aka Donald John Trump, is an insurrectionist. And that's, the Constitution does not require it to be in a court of law. It does not require it to be determined in a court of law that somebody is an insurrectionist. It just needs to be determined by people in general, a certain percentage of the population in general. It's general knowledge. It's all documented, what happened. We see him on camera encouraging his audience to walk down to the Capitol, and he'll be walking with them. He wasn't. He went back, and he wasn't allowed to. I guess his lawyers recommended him not to walk down there with them, but he told them he'd be walking with them, and they went all down there, and they caused a lot of violence. And I mean, how is that ever going to be legal? But he encouraged it. Okay, he didn't. Yeah, he got away. He was careful in his words, so he couldn't necessarily be tied to all the violence. But he saw all the calls to hang Mike Pence, his vice president, and did nothing. Just sat there on TV watching it, in his little I don't know what, his Oval Office or something, or the side. I don't know where he was watching it on TV. He was watching it near the Oval Office, if it wasn't inside the Oval Office. I mean, if that is not a violation of the office, nothing is. So, what I'm trying to say is that the Constitution, it's not specific. Like, how do you determine? Well, it was a court of law in Colorado and the Supreme Court of Colorado who confirmed it. And in addition to that, if that's not enough, he was also impeached. Okay, yes, successfully impeached, not successfully convicted, because the standards are so impossibly high that it's impossible to convict somebody, right? I mean, I guess Dick Nixon, who did far less, would have been convicted had he not resigned first, but he did so much less than what Donald Trump has done. And it's just the times we're in. It's crazy. It's insane times that we're in. But anyway, okay, so all that is required is that somebody is determined to be and participate in insurrection, and it's on our TV sets. It's all documented. It's clear. Whether you say that he didn't mean to, that it was a protest, a violent coup is what it was. They were trying to take over. They were going to hang Mike Pence, and they were going to take over their government. They were breaking into where Congress was trying to hold this, trying to confirm the vote, right, to certify the election. They were going to break in and stop the ceremony. They were literally breaking in, and it's all documented. There's nothing unclear about that. That is fact. And they thought that Donald Trump told them to do it. And that's why they were so bold, because they thought they were going to be protected by Donald Trump, who would be the president in a new world, that would be the United States. It was going to be a new America. He was making America great again in their minds. That is the situation. It wasn't done legally. It wasn't any kind of legal action at all. It was a violation of law. It was a criminal act, a violent criminal act that he created with all of his people, and they all talked about it. Steve Bannon bragged about it and still brags about it. Let's not be stupid. Let's be clear. And I wrote here, I typed down here the passages that I just read you. These they're called uh Modern Doctrine on Enforcement Clause. This was the fourth one that I just read to you, and I read the previous to this, I read the third one. There are four altogether. I said these clause passages clearly indicate that Congress's power to enforce, quote unquote, the provisions of the 14th Amendment stated in Section 5 have nothing, okay, the power, Congress's power, so it has absolutely nothing to do with the amendment's language in Section 3 that describes someone's eligibility for high office or, quote unquote, enforcing an insurrectionist's ineligibility for office. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with Section 1, which is the amendment that every other section elaborates on. So, let me read that again so it's clear. These clause passages, that I just read you, and also, all the different sections of the of the 14th Amendment, they all clearly indicate that Congress's power to enforce the provisions of the 14th Amendment stated in Section 5 of the 14th Amendment has absolutely nothing to do with the amendment's language in Section 3 that describes someone's eligibility for high office or enforcing an insurrectionist's ineligibility for office. In addition, I wrote, in addition, nowhere does the Constitution state that Congress must enforce anything in the 14th Amendment. It's like optional. Section 5 just states that they have the power, if needed, to enforce the law with the appropriate legislation. It's not required, to it's not required. It's an optional thing. It does it, if it was required, the Constitution, the 14th Amendment would state, uh, you know, and please see Section 5 for your next step, or, uh, you know, it is required that Congress then, uh, after removing, if they fail to remove the disability, then they have to pass an act. I mean, that's all that they have created from the 14th Amendment is acts. They're called acts. The Voting Rights Act, the Religious Restoration Act, isn't it? Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It's acts. They create acts to protect certain individuals in certain situations, to make it clear that they are protected under the 14th Amendment. Those are the only laws, the only legislations that have come from the 14th Amendment, from Section 5. And for the Supreme Court to claim that Congress then, after failing to remove the disability, which is his ineligibility, Trump's ineligibility to become president of the United States, that they then need to put it into law. And if they don't get the votes to do that, that they can't stop him from being president. That is distorting the law. And shame on you, Supreme Court, for trying to distort our Constitution, to mislead people into distorting the Constitution. All of you, each and every one of the justices on the Supreme Court made the same oath to the Constitution that Trump did. And they are guilty as just like Trump is. This is a coup. I guess these justices want to take over our government and be untouchable like Trump. And they're being rewarded for doing so by Trump and his people. It's disgusting. It's filthy. Shame on you, Supreme Court justices. I say I do not criticize the liberal ones. I guess there's 4 liberals. I don't know. But shame on you. Brett Kavanaugh, shame on you. John Roberts, take control. I mean, I like you, John Roberts. Why are you? This is a sham. This is disgusting. This is not what you went to law school for. Why are you letting these people hijack the Supreme Court? What's happening here? Do something. This is wrong. This is corrupt. You're corrupt as a body. The Supreme Court is corrupt, and you're in charge. You're the head of the Supreme. You're the head justice, right? I don't know what you call you. You're in charge, and you have gone rogue. And I'm disgusted. I'm ashamed of this country. I'm ashamed of the Supreme Court. I'm ashamed of the Republican Party and Trump. I'm ashamed. Shame on you all. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I want to say. Okay, I wrote a little more. Also, I wrote, it is clear that Section 3 assumes that an insurrectionist has already won the presidency. It's clear from the language in the Constitution that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that the insurrectionist has already won the presidency. Otherwise, Congress would not need to go to all the aforementioned trouble, like getting 2/3 of each house voting to remove the disability. I mean, you wouldn't do that for somebody who was running for president, right? Because they might not win. It's when somebody wins and they're an insurrectionist. So anybody saying, "Oh, we'd be going against the popular vote to remove him from office, we'll be going against the will of the American people," that's bullshit. Because here it says, if he basically the language, and we'll go over it in a minute, just one last time before I go. It assumes that an insurrectionist has already won the presidency. Can you imagine all the people who want to run for president, them going to all this trouble for them? No, it would be when somebody wins the presidency and they're not eligible. Now, it's pretty straightforward. When somebody's 34 years old, they're not eligible. Period. I'm sorry, I see your birth certificate. It's you're not 35 yet. You can't be president. And they can't even run. And there's no political party who would nominate somebody who's 34 years old to become president and put them on the ballot, and then they win. Sorry, you can't be president. You're 34 years old. I mean, it's so stupid. I mean, that's the Republican Party for you here in 2025 now, putting some insurrectionist, some criminal who has like how many court cases against him that they're dropping supposedly right now, right? Yeah, I guess you thought you'd be praying those cases away, right? All you stupid, sorry, Christians. There are smart Christians, but apparently the majority of Christians in this day and age are on the stupid side. I'm sorry. I can't help but say that. And I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me, but use your brain. Okay. I know you guys just pray, pray, pray. And boy, have your prayers gone far, because look, the guy's still still in the running, about to take office. I mean, I can't even believe this is a reality in 2025. I just can't even believe it. So we will go over it one last time before I go now. And I'm about to go. I have to start making decisions in my backyard. And I really, it's just, uh, our house is in chaos. Our property is in chaos, and we're leaving anyway. Okay. So it is clear that Section 3 assumes that an insurrectionist has already won the presidency. Otherwise, Congress would not need to go to all the aforementioned trouble, 2/3 voting, of each house voting to remove such a disability. Okay. And let's go back to, this. I'm about to go. All right. So, okay, let's repeat Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States. So the way it's stated is kind of unclear. No person shall be senator, blah, 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 who has also engaged is basically what the wording means, even if it sounds odd and out of place. And shall have engaged, there should be an and in there, and shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, which is the United States, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Right. So you cannot, no person shall be president who is also engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But, and again, the Constitution gives them an out in case there's ever going to be any kind of exception to this. The Constitution was so kind, the writers of this Amendment 14 was so kind as to give Congress an out in case there was any situation where that wasn't valid. It wasn't valid to label that person an insurrectionist, even though he or she committed insurrection. So they gave Congress an out and said, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. End of discussion. It doesn't say refer to section 5 for your next set of steps, or and such a and if they aren't able to remove if 2/3 of the vote is not accomplished, then if you can't, then you have to create the next step is to create a law stating he is an insurrectionist. I mean, there's no such thing in the Constitution, and shame on you, Supreme Court, for misguiding the people who usually don't read the law. You're experts. You're supposed to be experts on the law, and you are abusing your authority and making it seem like section 5 is what is required, and clearly skipping over section 3 to go to section 5 is incorrect and is a distortion of our US Constitution. Shame on you. All of you should be disqualified from being supreme justices, is what I say. You have life appointments until you die, and we should remove you because you have violated your office by putting us in this situation where we're stuck with this tyrant that is Trump, and who he's going to create Nazi Germany in our country. He's going to put all the immigrants in labor camps, and then he's going to decide that certain citizens don't deserve their citizenship, and he's going to throw them. I mean, I could be thrown in a labor camp, and I might have to escape the United States of America, my country that I'm queen of. He's not king. I'm queen. He is not a queen. He is not a woman. He's not in line. I am in line. I may be his genetic daughter, but I have many genetic fathers. He's not the only one, and I didn't grow up with him as my father either. He's not somebody I even knew growing up. I'm just trying to stop the sharing here. I didn't grow up knowing him. He came over to my house a couple times to rape me, okay? And that's it. I only remember him coming over 2 times in his little limo, his black limo in my driveway. I thought he was one of my father, Dennis Wayne Elliott, or Dennis W. Elliott, aka Dennis Wayne Elliott. It was one of his business associates, okay? My father went to Harvard. I remember what's his face from Harvard, that lawyer that was on the O.J. Simpson team that thinks he's so great, who is guilty as charged, and also abused his authority with that poor girl who accused him on the airplane of being, I don't know what, shame on you. And I forget his name, and I'm sorry, I don't have time. I don't care to look him up at this point. I don't even want to say his name. What a disgrace. What a disgusting disgrace our country's in. I'm just so horrified. And I hope that when I move to New York State, the state of the land of my maternal ancestry and my maternal lineage. I really hope. Okay, I guess I got disconnected. I really hope that moving to New York State, the land of my maternal lineage, makes a difference. I don't know what else to do. I mean, I don't know what else to do on this New Year's Day, 2025. Please, you know, do your job, everybody that's in government. You're in, you owe a debt of gratitude to the people of this country. There's no other reason why you're in office. And, I'm horrified at how you have corrupted our, your office and the people and our government. I'm horrified. And, I'm especially horrified by the Supreme Court. And I don't know. I don't think we have a need for the Supreme Court anymore because they just use their office to rob the US citizens of their rights. They've robbed me of mine. I know that. All right. Well, I guess that's all I have to say.